Hey guys, it's Cassera, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. So this is actually part 2 of my January wrap-up. I will link part 1 down below. And in part 1, I talk about my reading goals, how I did on my reading goals for the month of January, my reading stats for the month, as well as my unwrapped book challenge, my rereads, and my nonfiction books that I read this month. But this is the fun part of the wrap-up because I'm going to be talking about all of the fiction books that I actually chose to read in the month of January. I'm going to start with my lowest rated book and end with my highest rated book. So we'll end on a good note. And there are a lot of them, so let's get into it. The first book that I read in the month of January is One True Love by Jenkins. I was really excited going into this book because I really wanted to read more of Jenkins Reid's books because I had read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo last year and I really enjoyed it. So One True Love is following the main character whose husband goes down in a plane crash. She is very much in love with him at the time and believes that he is her one true love, grieves a lot for him, and finally gets over him and starts to move on and falls in love again, who she also believes is her one true love, only to have her husband basically come back to life when it turns out that he didn't actually die in the helicopter crash, but was actually living on an island for the last few years. So it's definitely a very interesting premise. I feel like Jenkins Reid's book always have interesting premises, and it was building up so well towards the ending, and I felt like it just ended. Like it didn't drag it out at all. It just kind of, it happened, and I feel like that no one really fought for anyone. I just wanted more drama to this book than there was. It was very clean and it wrapped up really nicely and there was just no drama. So like the first half of this book is definitely intriguing and fun to read. The second half of this book I found just didn't live up to the setup. Like the payoff in the second half just didn't live up to the setup in the first half. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars, which is just a little bit below average for me. The next book on this list that I want to talk about is also by Jenkins Reid, and that is Maybe in Another Life. I definitely wanted to give the author another try because her first book that I read by her, I really loved. So I decided to pick up this one because I'd heard a lot better things about this one. So this book talks kind of about the multiverse theory, which I just think is cool that it's in like a contemporary book. Every decision that we make creates a world in which if we had chosen the other option, what our lives would be like in that world. So at the beginning of this novel, the main character has the choice to either go out with her ex that she had loved at the time but has been estranged from for many years, or to not go out with him. And it just follows along two different storylines of what would happen to her life if she did go out with him and if she didn't go out with him. And it was definitely really fun. I definitely enjoyed myself, but I had a little bit of the same issue with this one as I did with One True Loves, and that is just the ending didn't pay off the setup. I feel like we could have just gone so much more into this story. We could have had so much more drama and just Easter eggs between the two lives, but it didn't go into all of that. It just kind of ended. So I still really enjoyed this one a lot better though, because for me, it was only like the last chapter or so that was disappointing in this one. So I ended up giving it 4 stars because I still really enjoyed it. By the way, I read both of these on audiobook. Definitely enjoyed this one a lot more and will likely read more of her books in the future. The next book I want to talk about is How to Speak Dragonese by Cressida Cowell. This is the 3rd book in the How to Train Your Dragon series. I really loved the first 2 books in this series, and this book is following our main character Hiccup and his best friend Fishlegs as they escape from these shark worms. It was definitely a fun read. It definitely cheered me up. It was a very happy book and an adventurous book, but it wasn't as heartbreaking and just like good as the other 2 books in the series. I will definitely still be continuing on with the series because I know that some of the other books are going to be very heartbreaking and I'm going to love them, but this one just didn't hit that level for me overall. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. Really loved reading it, but not as good as the other 2 books. So the next book I want to talk about is The Kiss Quotient by Hoang. I did not know what to think going into this book. I don't read a lot of pure romance novels. Generally, if I read contemporary books that have a large romantic aspect, they'll be more like Taylor Jenkins reads this book, where there's something else to it that pull me into the story. So the main character of The Kiss Quotient is autistic, and she hires a male escort to help her learn about dating because her mom is pushing her to get married to have grandkids. It was just a fun read because obviously she falls in love with this escort. It was definitely well written, and I loved being in the mind of this character. She is such an interesting person. She just has such a logical mind, and I loved being in it. There's just a few parts of it that I was a little uncomfortable with. Not the steamy scenes, but more of like when the love interest starts like saying things like "you're mine" and being possessive over her. I just really don't like that in my books. That kind of annoyed me a little bit, but overall I really enjoyed it. It was a fun, cute book, and I definitely recommend it if you like romance novels. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book that I want to talk about is The Goose Girl by Shannon and Hale. This is a YA fairy tale retelling of the Grimm's Brother fairy tale, also called The Goose Girl. The main character is a princess who has this magical power that people are uncomfortable with, where she can speak to animals. So she's supposed to be the heir to the throne, but instead the queen sends her off to another kingdom to be married to the prince of this other kingdom. But on the way, her guards, who don't trust her because she has this magic that is untrustworthy, turn against her and they present her handmaid instead. They try to kill her, but she escapes from them and ends up working in the palace as the Goose Girl. I thought for a YA book, this was just so heartbreaking sometimes. It gets dark, but not too dark. It was just a fun book to read. It was a fun ride. I read this one on audiobook also. It is a full cast audiobook, which I actually didn't enjoy that aspect of it because the different voices as they come in and out and like the sound effects that they use kind of pulled me out of the story sometimes. I know some people really love that aspect of audiobooks. I personally don't. So for that reason, and because it's not really so much my cup of tea, I ended up only giving it 4.5 stars, but it's definitely really, really good overall as a story. Then I want to talk about is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So this is a World War II historical fiction following the main character of Lisa Menninger. She's an orphan in Nazi Germany, and this book is narrated by death. So it's definitely an interesting premise. I thought it was a really well written book. I really enjoyed reading it. It's definitely heartbreaking at times. The way death is talked about in this book, it's such like a practical way, definitely pulled at my heartstrings sometimes. I didn't enjoy it as much as everyone else seems to, so I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because it's still a really, really good book. It's definitely a book that is really hard to read sometimes, but a story that I feel like is really, really well done. Personally, I don't think this is going to be one of my favorites, but definitely a really, really good book overall. The next book that I want to talk about is In an Absent Dream by Shannon McGuire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series, which is one of my favorite series. I really, really loved reading this book. It's probably one of my favorites in the series. It follows the character of Catherine Lundy as she goes to the goblin market, and I love the world building in the series. I love the writing. Catherine Lundy is such an interesting character to follow, and I love the goblin market. I just don't like that it's so short. I always feel like I'm missing something. I just want more from this book. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because I still really, really loved it, but I want more. I want more. I did do a longer review on this one, so I will link that down below for you guys to check that out as well. The next book that I want to talk about is Crazy Rich Asians by Kwan. I actually finished this book today. This is a library book, by the way. It was part of my library book haul, which is actually going to be coming out in a few days. You guys will get to see that one. That being said, I didn't actually read this as a physical book because I had this book on hold as an audiobook in the library for like months and didn't get it. So I picked it up at the library when I went this past week. And then right after I picked it up, the library gave me the audiobook. So I tried to read it going between the two for a little while, but the audiobook was a different version than the physical book that I had. So I ended up just reading the audiobook. I really enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I would. It's following several different Asian families. I believe in Singapore is where the families live, but there are characters like the main couple is Rachel and Nick, who live in New York, but there's also Astrid, who is Nick's cousin. Such a fun book. It definitely shows how people look at them as Asians and treat them differently because of that, even though they are still rich, like, and can buy, like, the first scene in this was just so fun because they're getting kicked out of the hotel, basically, that they put reservations for, and then they just end up buying the whole hotel instead. So it was just such a fun book in that sense. There's a lot of pettiness in it that I didn't like, but the ending is a little heartbreaking, and it was just so much fun. I actually finished this one today, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Now on to all of my 5-star reads. The first book I'm going to talk about is Circe by Madeline Miller. I ended up doing a full review for this, so I will link that down below for you guys. I really enjoyed Circe. It's following the character of Circe, who is a goddess. She doesn't have any god powers, but she turns out that she is a witch because she uses those powers to turn someone into a monster. She is exiled to an island, and it's kind of her life on the island and how people visit her and how they interact with her and how they treat her, because some of them don't treat her very nicely. That's not a very good explanation of this book. It's definitely one that you want to go into a little bit more blind, so definitely check this one out. Also, just so you know, this book does get really dark at times, which I loved about this book. A lot of hyped books I feel like don't get very dark, but this one does, and I loved it so much. It was so good. The next 5-star book that I want to talk about is Verity by Colleen Hoover. So Colleen Hoover is an author that I follow because of her romantic contemporary. So when I found out she came out with a new book, I decided to pick it up. But it turns out this one is not a romantic contemporary. It is a romantic suspense book, which is different. We're following the main character of Lowen, and she is a struggling author, but she gets an offer at the beginning of the book to finish a very popular series for another author named Verity, who is unable to continue her series due to medical reasons. She meets Verity's husband, Jeremy, who offers to let her stay at their house while she's going through all of Verity's old notes because she's evicted from her apartment, and it just takes off from there. Definitely a thriller. It has some really good suspense in this book. There are definitely some jump scenes, which is weird. In a book, you would expect jump scenes, in a movie more, but I definitely had a few jump scenes in the book, which was definitely really fun. I ended up giving it 5 stars because of the ending. I really loved the ending. I wouldn't have given it that high of a rating otherwise, because there's definitely some tropes and cliches in there that I didn't like so much, but the ending made this book for me. So if you like Colleen Hoover or you like romantic suspense novels, I definitely recommend this one. I also did a full review on this one, so I will link that down below for you guys as well. The next book that I want to talk about is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a book following a main character who wakes up in a different body every day, and he has to solve the mystery of who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. And it follows like a non-linear timeline, so he could wake up in the morning or in the afternoon, and he has 8 days, 24 hours in each body to figure out this mystery. I just really enjoyed it. So I read this one on audiobook, and I really love the audiobook. I'm definitely gonna have to reread this one eventually. I just want to go back, read like the beginning parts, knowing what I know now. It was fun. It was such a wild ride, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to talk about is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is definitely going to be one of my new favorites. In this world, humanity has colonized Mars and the outer belts, and there's just stuff happening in this book in which there is going to be some potential war going on. But then there's these other things happening that are a lot stranger and scary, and I don't even know how to explain it without giving you guys spoilers, but I really enjoyed this book. Like, I think this is one of those books that you have to go into a little bit blind. I definitely plan on doing like a full book talk for this one, so definitely look out for that. I absolutely loved it. It gets really dark at times, gets graphic sometimes. Really good read. And for this one, I went between the physical book and the audiobook. I liked the physical book more than the audiobook for this one, but the audiobook is still really good, and I really loved it. It's definitely gonna be one of my favorites, and I can't wait to get to the rest of the series. And the last and favorite book that I read this month is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I loved this book so much. I absolutely loved it. I finished it last night, and I cannot wait to get to the next book in this series. It's a big one, but it's definitely worth it. It's following the Bingtown traders, so it's following many characters in the series. So the Bingtown old trader families, they have these ships made of wizard wood, and after 3 deaths in the family, these ships are quickened to become a live ship, so the ship can talk and can kind of move on its own and stuff like that. It has its own personality. And at the beginning of this novel, we're following a character named Althea, who is the daughter of the captain of the live ship Vivasha. Ephron Visturt is very sick, and he will be the 3rd death for that live ship, and then she will be quickened. Althea is sure that her father is going to leave the ship to her, so she is excited to be the captain of the ship. But while her father is recovering at home, he gives the captaincy to Kyle Haven, who is her brother-in-law. So he is her sister's husband, and she and Kyle do not get along very well, and there's so much drama in this book, and there are hints of like magic and things happening, and you get a lot of perspectives. Get some perspectives from her niece and her nephew that are just fantastic, and her father's old like mate of the ship named Brashen Trell, who is from another of the old trader families, but he is disowned from that trader family, and there's just so much in this book. The world building is fantastic. This is definitely a very character-driven book because you kind of know what's gonna happen at the beginning of the book. Like, it's obvious, it's not given away or anything like that, but it's obvious what's going to happen by the end of the book. But following all of the characters was just so much fun. This is also one of those that gets kind of dark at times. I believe this is considered grimdark fantasy, which I love grimdark fantasy, so I love that. I definitely highly recommend this one. Also, with The Realm of the Evelyn's, which this is the first novel in the 2nd trilogy of that series, I read the first novel in the 1st trilogy and I thought it was okay. This one, though, is so much better. So if you liked that one, you're gonna love this one. If you didn't like that one, you might still really love this one. So I highly, highly recommend it. So those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I really, really enjoyed myself. I definitely read some books in that month that are gonna be my favorites overall, and first novels and series that I am so excited to get into the rest of this year. I know I was really quick with those because there were so many books, but if you wanna know more about those books, check out my reading vlogs. I will link them down below for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I post videos every Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, so consider subscribing. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. I'm now on Instagram as well as Goodreads, so links to both of those are in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!